session. Welcome all of you to another session of SAP S/4HANA configuration class. Um, Last week, we started our journey into designing what we call configuring the system based on our functional design document. And we did some major configurations around org structure. And we took our time to discuss the concepts as much as possible, company code, um, the variant principles, field status variants, um, posting variants, and fiscal year variants. We set that up, and we explained some basic concepts. Now remember that, like I said, I always say that your design is based on what the business design document has specified. You're not expected to, um, design out of that. And it's important you also go through the documents to understand how this document is created and, how the requirements are defined in the document and how we use that document to design our system. It's very, very important you understand that flow. So as we move on, we're going to start picking up other areas of configuration. We have done business areas. We'll look at chart of accounts later or very soon. I think that's where we're going to end our class today. But today, we're going to go deep. We're going to take some more steps. So last week, we finished with enterprise structure. If you're wondering how I got here, once again, this is SAP S/4HANA. And we had said that to begin to design your systems, you need to go to the configuration screen in SAP S/4HANA and you navigate there through tools, customizing, IMG, that's implementation guide, and then you go to execute projects. Then you go to SAP reference ING. Once you're in, the first thing we did was to set up the structure, which we did last week, and we're able to um, explain some concepts around that, and we're able to do some basic configurations. And we went into financial accounting, um, global setting, which I said is a setting that affects, it's a setting that is done at client level. And we started looking at ledgers. We looked at, the field status variants, and we assigned it to the company code. We looked at the concept of ledgers. In ledger, we went straight to year and fiscal periods, and that is where we basically ended our discussion last week. And of course, posting periods too. Yeah, fiscal year and posting periods. I believe that's where we ended last week. So let me give you a chart of, let's go back to explaining why all this matters, and why this is important as we design the system. It's always very nice to have that background understanding. Yes, so we made a lot of discussion. We looked at the concept of company code, and what we have started doing now, as at this time, we have set up the company. We have set up the company code, and that we did at the enterprise structure area. Now, in company code, we have also assigned certain things to company code. We have assigned fiscal year. We have assigned posting periods. We have assigned field status. So these are very important organizational objects that are assigned directly to the company code and are created at client level, meaning that any company code can have access to them and can use them. Now, there's one more thing we need to define, which is ledgers and currencies because we need to tell the system, you know, our what we call financial accounting principles. I'll explain that as we move on, as we move forward for those who do not have this background, just for them to understand the basic idea. And like I've said, one of the ways to make this class meaningful is always go back and do your research. If you hear something that you don't understand, don't just stay in SAP. Expose yourself, research on other concepts, understand it, and let it make sense to you. So this is what we have been mapping so far. You can see the structure and why this is important. If we don't map these processes, and this is what configuration is all about, like I've said. And remember, all this information, we have picked them from the functional design document. Now, today we're going to progress and we're going to do some more configurations in the ledger page. So for ledger, we have done fiscal year. So I think we're going to start here, and I'll just take my time to explain, and we will basically take it up from there. Okay, let me see and confirm. Okay. Let's see which one we're going to pick up first. Just going through my screen. Just trying to make sure we align it properly to the ledgers. And there's one thing we need to do first, which is our accounting principles. Okay, so let me minimize this. So when you go to ledgers, you have these are all the options you have. Fields, ledgers, fiscal year, parallel accounting approach, parallel accounting, integration of controlling with financial accounting. Now, before we go into setting up the currencies, that we're going to be using for our transaction, we need to define what we call the accounting principles. And it is very, very important. And it's one concept that I will try as much as possible to explain because I know we have a combination of people from different backgrounds. Now, what is accounting principles and why do we need to set it up? Why does this happen? Now, the idea is that, let me explain so that it makes some sense. Now, accounting principles. Now, take for example, remember in our configuration, we have company. And company stays at the group level. Sorry, my pen is, company stays at the group level. Another company, we have company code. Company code is like a country, stays in a country or a branch in a separate country. Now, why are companies required to make sure that they comply or they submit their reports in different accounting principles? Now, take note that let's assume that this group is in the US and this company, what was the name of our company we used for our config? Let me see, ABCTG. ABCTG is based in UK. Just imagine the group is based in the US, and of course, the group uses USD. for their transactions. The company code is based in UK, and UK's currency is GBP. And for some of us who are not accountants, the question is, how does this work? Like, because these two they are one company, that, the idea is that if you're based in the UK, um, you do your transaction in GBP, but at the end of the year or certain periods, your group you will need to report your activities to the group so that we'll have one group accounts. I'm just going to use basic concept as much as possible. I'll try to not use a lot of complicated accounting jargons. So at the end of the year, US will submit one account to the US authorities. However, before they submit that account, they need a company in UK to submit their own account to the group. So it's simple. We have a company in the US, it's a group company, and we have another one in the UK, which is a smaller company in a country. So according to financial reporting, at the end of every year, this group company will need to prepare accounts in group. Like, it will not be ABCG, ABCTG UK or ABCTG US. It's ABCTG group. And for them to do group reporting, they need to get information from US, from China, from UK, from every location where they are. All those locations will submit their accounts to the US. And because these accounts are in different currencies, US will need to translate those currencies into dollars using exchange rates and accounting principles. So two things: currency and accounting principles. I'll explain accounting principles. Now, what are accounting principles? By by law, or as part of legal requirements, every country has adopted a principle, an accounting principle of how they report their financial statements. So it's just like every country has their religion. If you go to the Arab states, Muslim is their religion. If you come to the West, Christianity. If you go to Asia, Buddhism and all that. I'm just using religion to explain this, so it can, you can understand it as basic, as simple as possible. Same way in every country, the laws there have defined what accounting principles we will use to prepare our books of accounts. In the US, for example, there's something we call GAAP, generally general account acceptable accounting principle. In the UK, for example, there's what we call International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS. In Germany also has their own principle, which is I can't pronounce it, but Germany also has their own local accounting principle. So the idea is that for these countries, this principle drives the way they prepare their accounts, because it has standards that you must follow. So the way you prepare accounts in the US is different from the way you prepare accounts in the UK. And the way you prepare accounts in the UK is almost the same way you prepare accounts in Nigeria. Why? Nigeria has adopted IFRS as the accounting standard. So any country that has adopted any of these principles will prepare their accounts according to that principle. And of course, the advantage is numerous, because it will just help streamline reporting. It will help globalization. It will help trade, because if you want to do trade, cross-Atlantic trade, if you're in Nigeria and you want to have a business in the UK, it's easier for your reporting, because UK and Nigeria speak the same language in terms of reporting and how they present their books. So it has helped globalization. It has really helped promote trade and, reporting and, it has also helped stakeholders, global stakeholders, giving them the information they need to make good decisions. We'll look at the benefits much later. But this is the understanding that every country has their accounting principles. Some are the same across, like I've given you an example, UK and Nigeria use the same accounting principles to prepare their books. They have local laws that guide the way they do their business, but generally, in terms of international standards, they use the same international reporting standards. Now, the tweak is that in this scenario we have now, we have a company in the US that uses GAAP and a company in the UK that uses IFRS. The one in the UK will submit their accounts to the US in IFRS because UK is not a GAAP country. So it is the responsibility of the group to translate the accounts that the UK has submitted to align with GAAP. But before now, it was a tedious job because you had to pull out the trial balance and translate. That translation, there were issues with translating errors, issues with compliance, people not interpreting it correctly and all that. So what has ERP or SAP helped to do? SAP has said that our system is built on these principles. And once you enter your books in IFRS in SAP and you have a group company that is in USD, the system will help you translate the principles automatically. So if you're reporting in US, you don't have to spool it out and manually do the translation. The system translates IFRS to GAAP and helps with the reporting side with reporting. And the tool that the very important tool that they use to do that is what we call leading ledgers. We'll explain that as we move on. So it's simple that parallel accounting happens when companies belong to group companies and when they report, on different accounting principles. If they report in the same principle, then there's no point. For example, if you have three companies, all of them are in the US and they all run on GAAP, you don't need parallel accounting. But if you have a company that is running on a different principle and has a different currency, then that is where parallel accounting is now very, very important. Any questions at this point? Mike, Sam, Anayo, any questions? Or if it makes sense, just say you're okay, no question, so we can move on. Please respond so that we can move on.
No question from my end.
Okay, so you guys, I need you to respond, so I'm sure you are here. Thank you. You can put a thumbs up or you can speak up. All right. So that is the idea of parallel accounting. It's just to support reporting in different currencies and in different accounting principles. And that is the beauty of SAP. Automatically, the system divides that. So it's important to know that in order to solve this issue of reporting with different currencies, and accounting principles, SAP provided two options. So you have two options: parallel accounting or parallel ledgers. So these are the two options you have to report. You know, if you have this scenario, you have two options. It's either you use parallel accounting or use parallel ledgers. Now, and this can be linked to two approaches. One, we have the account approach. And two, we have the ledger approach. And I'll just be simple as as soon as possible. I will be as simple as possible. Now, for account approach, what account approach is saying is that parallel accounting, it's an option of using parallel accounting in which chart of accounts create the basis for different accounting principles. So let me say this. For those who are finance, they have what we call chart of accounts. They are your ledgers. They are your ledgers. I will explain much later, Anayo. But chart of accounts are your ledgers, and they are the basis for parallel accounting. So one is you can use chart of accounts as the basis to do parallel accounting. What is parallel accounting? Reporting in different currencies and in different principles. So you can use chart of account as a basis, or you can use what we call the ledger approach. So you either use chart of accounts or you use ledger approach. There's a difference between chart of account and ledger in SAP. Ledger here is not the accounting ledger. Rather, it is an account, it's a ledger based, it's an approach in SAP that we use to do parallel accounting. It's not charter, it's not ledgers in the finance term. It's ledgers in a separate terminology. Why the first one is chart of accounts, the second is ledgers. And by ledgers, we mean SAP's definition of ledger in parallel accounting means you have three types of ledgers. You have what we call OL, which is the leading ledger, NL, which is a non-leading ledger, and the third, we can name it anything. All this OL is the standard term, but for the other ones, we can call it anything. We call them extension ledgers, EXT, extension ledgers. So we have, in order to manage, like I've said, in order to manage multiple currencies and multiple accounting principles, there are two structures that SAP has put in place. One is the accounts-based approach. Two is the ledger-based approach. In accounts-based approach, we are saying that to do parallel accounting between currencies and different principles, you use chart of accounts to um, kind of map those differences. So chart of accounts is the basis. So the idea is that the architecture of accounts-based approach can be based on accounts. You can use, for example, we can decide that all accounts um, that we create in our chart of accounts will be used for IFRS principles. We can say, let me explain. So if you have chart of accounts, we can classify them as um, we can say group A of those chart of accounts. Group A will be used for IFRS principles. Group B of those chart of accounts will be used for GAAP. This is the account-based approach, but what we are using is chart of accounts that you create: rent, expense, admin expense, all these other expenses. When you're creating those chart of accounts, you can define a setup that says that account group A will be used for IFRS principles, and you can classify those GLs to do that piece of activity. Then the other group of GLs will be used for GAAP. This is one approach of managing accounting principles. The second approach is ledger. And the ledger approach is, like I've listed here, we have three types of ledgers. And we can use these ledgers to manage accounting principles and by extension, currencies. So what are we saying here? We're saying that in standard SAP, it's something you can never change. It's a standard in SAP. If we're not using the account-based approach, this is account-based approach. If we're using the ledger-based approach, which is what is recommended, then you will have three types of ledgers in your system. The first ledger is called the leading ledger. And you must have a leading ledger in SAP. You must have one leading ledger and, and at least one non-leading ledger. But in SAP, we have three types of ledgers that we use for parallel accounting: leading ledger, non-leading ledger, and extension ledgers. Take note of that because this comes out a lot in your interviews. Because when you go into ledgers and parallel accounting, you might need to explain what this means. Now, if we're using the ledger approach, we will say that leading ledger we will use for IFRS, which is, no, we can say leading ledger, which is for our group. We're going to use, sorry, where's my, for my erasers? Okay. So we can say leading ledger we can use for our group. Our group is in the US, so we can say GAAP. So we can say for our leading ledger, we use GAAP, which is US, the company in the US. For for these other ledgers, we will use IFRS, which is group, which is country specific, which is a company in the UK. Then extension, let me do this. So we can say non-leading ledger, we're going to use IFRS. Extension ledgers, which is mostly used for consolidation. We can say non-leading ledger, we use IFRS. Extension ledgers, which is mostly used for consolidation, we can say we use IFRS. Now, this is very important to understand as a consultant when you configure the system, because the ledger principle is core to reporting. So when you're gathering requirements, you need to understand what approach are we using for parallel accounting. Remember, parallel accounting is necessary when you have companies that operate in different accounting principles and with different currencies. It's very, very important you note that. So if you're joining a project that is in more than one country and they use different currencies and they use different accounting principles, you have to set up your accounting principles. So this is basically just explaining the concept of accounting principles and why we need to set them up on the system. We need to set it up because in our configuration, we have a company code that will be sitting in GBP and that will sitting in USD. We'll also have other company codes sitting in other currencies, maybe in some in UK, in Netherlands, in Germany. So once this is the setting, then we need to make sure we set up our parallel accounting. And by parallel accounting, we need to define these three structures. If, like I've said, the best practice and standard is to use the ledger approach. And since SAP has recommended we use the ledger approach, we have to set up these three different ledgers to be able to help us manage parallel accounting, because we're going to have company codes that are sitting in other countries. So if you go back to our configuration, if you go to ledgers and parallel accounting, you're going to see here, define accounting principles. So if I execute this, you're going to see different accounting principles that have been used by different people within the system. So we can still use, you can see people are using GAAP. Remember, our company code is US. So we're going to be using US as our leading ledger currency. And we're going to be using IFRS, just like we have said here in our diagram. We will use GAAP as our leading ledger and IFRS as a non-leading ledger, for the companies that are within England or London, within the United Kingdom. Okay, so how do we set up our currencies? You can copy. There's one standard one, 1001. Let me see, or 0001. Yeah, so this is one that has been highlighted. So it's important that you don't change this. So you can copy from anyone. I can choose to copy this. So click on the side here and click on copy. Then change the code. So this would be gap, but because I know gap has been created before, you have to be careful not to duplicate IDs. You have to be very careful not to duplicate your accounting principles so that it doesn't conflict when you assign them to your company code. So I'm going to say gap. This is my own gap. I'll use asterisks to differentiate my own. This is gap. So general accounting, accepted accounting principles for my company code AB. Let me check. ABCTG. Enter. And I'm going to save. So this is Evie. Evie, sorry, I think I'm using I signed into your space. So let me change this. Uh, I can't do this here. I have to log out of this place. Yep, and I have to log out. So give me a minute, guys. Log out and go back to my company, to my own access. I signed into Evie's access. Okay. So let me continue. Yeah, national accounting, global settings, ledgers, parallel accounting, and Mike, please let me finish. You can write it on the chat or reach out to me later. If it's about access, please don't worry about that. Let me finish. Um, what do you want to ask? Is it about what I'm doing or access? Hi, Mike.
It's about what you are doing.
Okay,
Accounting
what is the
principle,
question you have?
the accounting principle about the ledgers that you said that we how to that ledger approach is the ledger principle is more preferred than chart of accounts. What I wanted to find out
Yes.
is it only dealing with ledgers that has to do with accounting principles, ledgers and currencies? Are there other things that we deal with when we're talking of accounting principles?
No, it's just ledgers and currencies.
Okay.
It's just ledgers and accounting principles. Ledgers, accounting principles. Like the most important thing is you use parallel accounting when there are different currencies and different accounting principles. That is when you have to do parallel accounting because they are parallel to each other. Because and another thing is by standard in SAP S/4HANA, you must have two ledgers. You must have a leading ledger and one non-leading ledger for reporting purposes. So basically, the leading ledger is used for it supports reporting across the group. Non-leading ledger is also helps with um, since you're going to be entering your transaction in another currency, in another principle, it helps to manage that level of information. So with your non-leading ledger, you can be flexible in the way um, you know, create in the way you report at local level. So it supports local reporting in that. So for example, since we have two currencies, GAP and IFRS, for the company that is in the UK, of course, they're actually going to sit on non-leading ledgers and they'll be assigned to um, um, IFRS, and that will help the local company, carry out their day-to-day transactions and reporting in their local currency. However, when they want to do group reporting, the system will translate those information at the local level into the group reporting level with GAP, and the system is able to to interpret or translate IFRS requirements to GAAP requirements, and of course produce that financial statement in line with GAAP. So I think that is the crux of the functionality with this. And all these ledgers are used for different levels of reporting. For example, extension ledgers can support consolidation and some other forms of reporting like tax reporting and other kinds of reporting requirements. Sorry, just a minute. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. All right, so when we finish, as we move on, I'm going to be explaining as we create, I'm going to be explaining the importance of these ledgers so that you can note that down as you move forward. So let's move on. So if you go to ledgers and you go to parallel accounting, you need to first define your own accounting principle. Remember, we have said that we're using GAAP because for group reporting and GAAP, and we also our company code is also GAAP. You know, we will. I'm thinking, yeah, we'll create IFRS for another level of reporting, just to make sure that we explain the two concepts. So for leading ledger, we're going to be using GAAP. For non-leading ledger, we'll use IFRS and also assign our currencies as we move on. For somebody like um, you know, what's his name now? Sam, that has his company code in UK, his own leading ledger will be IFRS, and his non-leading ledger will sit in GAAP so that he can appreciate the functionality of parallel accounting. But for us, if your company code is US based, that means your leading ledger would be GAAP because GAAP is the accounting principle for the US. So you have to make sure your accounting principle for the US is GAAP. If your company is in the UK, you have to make sure that your leading ledger has an accounting principle IFRS because UK's accounting principle is IFRS. So you have to make sure that whatever country you select or whatever country that your design is based in, you need to make sure you assign the accounting principle in that country when you're doing your parallel accounting. So if you go to define accounting principles, like I said, we can copy the one here. Mine, I will say, please don't use the same thing as me. Very, very important. You can use anything. You can use your name. You can use any combination of letters, but don't use the same thing. Don't replicate my own configs because we're in one client. Please take note. So you can, my own is G. If this is duplicate, the system will let me know. So I click on enter. I see there's nothing like that here. So I know that this is my own gap I will use for my own company. If I use another person's own, I might be copying the settings, the currency settings of that company, and it might throw up some errors. So I'm creating my own, then I save. Then I would go to my own request, select ABC Transport, and say okay. And I'll save. So I've created my accounting principles, and that is the first thing. Then when we go here, we're going to see the next thing we're going to look at is assign accounting principles to ledger groups. But before we do ledger groups, we need to create ledgers. So if you come here, for example, you're going to see ledger groups that has been created. So first thing is to define your accounting principles. We won't assign to any ledger for now because we have not set up our ledgers. If you go to ledger here, you will see ledger group. So once you have defined your accounting principles, click on, go to the same ledger, then click on ledgers, then you will see define ledger group. If you click on ledger group, you will see different kinds of ledgers here. But you will see one ledger that can never be removed, which is the leading ledger, OL. Every company code in SAP must have a leading ledger and must have one leading ledger and one non-leading ledger. It's very, very important. So if you come here and you go to ledger assignments, you will see that leading ledger has already been assigned. You can't change it, you can't add to it. It's standard for every company code. But the one we can create, the new one we can create is the non-leading ledger. And I can create here. So for example, if I click on, for example, copy this and just click on copy, but change this to, my own will be AL. Let me just take note of those things here. My counting principles, so I don't forget. I will say it is gap, but the gap is G asterisk P, GAP, US. Is my accounting principle. My non-leading ledger, I will say A asterisk, non-leading ledger. This is going to be assigned to IFRO asterisk. I'm going to create that principle now. So then another accounting principle for group reporting group. And I will say another accounting principle for local reporting. I'll say is IFRO this, which is IFRS. Because I know somebody has used IFRS before, I'm just using. So this is what I will create. So I've created the first one. I want to create my non-leading ledgers. So I'm going to come here, say this. This is my non-leading ledger. So I'll say this non-leading ledger ABCTG. Enter. Yes. And save. So I've created a non-leading ledger, A asterisk. Come here and go to ledger assignments. It's assigned to the leading ledger. Let's see this one. Let me check. Yes, so this is correct. So I have my non-leading ledger created. Another thing I'm going to create, sorry for going back and forth, I'm going to go back to accounting principle and create another currency, another principle for my local reporting. This is for group reporting. Where's my own now? G hash hash. Yes, this is, let me change this. This is for group reporting, ABTCG. I want to create another one for local reporting, ABCTG underscore gap, underscore U, and this is the group underscore US. Save. I'm going to create another one and copy this. Copy, create another one for local reporting. I'm going to call this IFRO underscore call this local underscore abtcg underscore ifrs. Save. Oh, I copied two. That's why. Sorry, I need to copy. Okay, it's created. So I have IFRS asterisk, and I have G. Okay, then I have G, general accepted accounting principles. So let me go out, come back again, and make sure everything is fine. So I have my gap and I have my IFRS. So I've created these two. You see, they're different from, so make sure you use combinations that are different from what is here. If not, you have an error or you'll be copying someone else's principle. So I've created those two. And, the next thing it will do is to assign accounting principles to the ledger group I've created. So if I click here, remember the ledger group I created was A asterisk, which is for my non-needing ledger. Okay, I think we will have to go in first. Okay, let's leave this for now. Let's leave this. We'll do the assignment when we pick up ledger. So these are the three things we need to do at this point. Create two principles and create one non-needing ledger. Make sure they are documented well. So the next thing we're going to do now is to go to ledgers and define settings for ledgers and currency types. So now we want to define ledgers. Those three ledgers, non-leading ledger, extension ledger, and leading ledger, we need to set them up. We need to map them to our accompanying code. We have already set them up. We need to make sure they are mapped with currency and our accompanying code. So let's go in. So you execute define settings for ledgers and currency types. Now, just to explain, to explain this concept of ledgers and what they are used for, let me go back here. So we have said that one ledger we have is OL, which is called leading ledger. See, it's leading ledger. And we have said that the leading ledger, just to explain so that we understand clearly, we have said that the leading ledger is the primary source of truth in the system. So the leading ledger is defined by SAP, and it is the cardinal point that helps us translate information, or that that is used to move. Remember, I said once you have different currencies and different principles, the leading ledger is that cardinal functionality that helps with that translation. And because it can translate, different principles, it can support with the translation of different principles, we say that the leading ledger is the primary source of truth in financial reporting and consolidation in SAP. It is mandatory for all company codes. It's a standard functionality in SAP that is a must for all company codes. And leading ledgers must be assigned to every company code in the system. Now, why is this important? Why is leading ledger important? So for us to get some context around it, it's important because it provides, the consolidated view of the group. Remember, I explained clearly the concept of, currency and parallel accounting, that when companies exist in different locations, there is need to provide that group reporting view. The functionality that translates currencies and that translates principle is the leading ledger. And because it's able to translate that, it provides a consolidated view of all the principles and all the currencies in the system, and it supports with group reporting. It is the only ledger, I'd say, that is fully integrated with all subsidiary modules, all sub-modules. So in SAP, we said that FI is integrated with all the modules in SAP. What makes FI that integrated module or that supports integration across module is because of leading ledger. So all subsidiary accounts or modules within finance, like controlling, asset accounting, you know, every, whether lease accounting and different, accounting principle, different, I would say subsidiary modules in SAP. It is a leading ledger that supports, that picks up this information from these modules and is able to do some key consolidation. Now, some of the key traits, if you look at it, is leading ledger uses what we call the group reporting or group accounting principles. And when we get into ledgers, we're going to understand the concept of the universal journal table, which we call SEDOCA. That will pick up when we get into the technical training. And it is the leading ledger that determines the fiscal year variance and the currencies in the accompanying code. Like we said, that the essence of parallel accounting is currencies and accounting principles. And it is leading ledger that would translate those that determines your fiscal year variance that you assign to your accompanying code. So if you're posting, the fiscal year variance will tell us which year or which month that you're entering your transaction. Is the leading ledger that controls that or determines that. Is the leading ledger that also determines currencies that are assigned to transactions in your accompanying code. So it is extremely important. And like I've said, it's a core functionality in SAP. That's why we have leading ledger, and that's why we need to assign the leading ledgers to our accompanying codes. Without that, it's impossible to do any transaction in SAP. The second type of ledger we have is what we call the non-leading ledger. We have the non-leading ledgers. Now, non-leading ledgers are parallel ledgers. Remember, we talked about the leading ledger here being GAAP, and the non-leading ledger means IFRS. So why do we need two ledgers? Why do we need two accounting principles? We have explained that it's a reporting requirement. If your company is a global company and it's existing in different locations that uses different accounting principles and different currencies, you must do parallel accounting. And for your parallel accounting and I have said that leading ledger sits with group reporting. So it supports group reporting and consolidation. So leading ledger sits with GAAP, which is at the company level. For local reporting requirements, let's say, for example, we have said that we have another company in the UK, and we need to report our financial transactions in line with IFRS, in line with local requirements in the UK. Now, for us to do that, since leading ledger is taking care of GAAP, we need another ledger to take care of IFRS, which is for local reporting purpose, and that ledger is the non-leading ledger. So the non-leading ledgers are parallel ledgers used basically to meet specific local requirements that differ from the group standard. So if there is any local requirement in the UK that differs from GAAP that we use in the US, we need the non-leading ledger to manage that difference. That is the essence of the non-leading ledger. It supports reporting that deviates, reporting requirement, local reporting requirement that deviates from the group. So let's say, for example, in the UK, since UK has a local requirement document that a local reporting requirement that states that, for example, this is just fictitious. So for example, The local requirement says that before you submit any invoice, you have to apply certain principles. You have to, um, you know, translate your transactions. Let's say, for example, you have to, do some adjustments before you can, submit your invoice to tax authorities. That requirement is local to the UK. It's a local law and is specific to the UK. It's not specific to the US that has the group reporting. So since it's specific to UK and we need to make sure that we comply with that law in the UK, we have to set up a non-leading ledger to manage that requirement. Requirements can also mean that, before you, before you submit your financial statements, you need to make adjustments to, let's say, your revenue or your costs of operations, all those laws that are specific to countries. To manage those requirements, you need your non-leading ledgers. And that is the essence of the knowledge. So it's important that functional consultant understands these requirements. They understand what is the local requirement that differs from the group reporting requirements. It is the job of the functional consultant and the BAs to make sure that they gather that requirement carefully and it's documented so that they can decide on how to set up the non-leading ledger to manage those requirements. That's one of the, and if you look at non-leading ledgers, since they are also used to support local requirements, they can have a different fiscal year variant or a posting period variant. So because they are also, um, you know, because they also have reporting functionality, and because the non-leading ledger is also used to do certain level of reporting, you can, it can have a different fiscal year variant, a different fiscal year, which is different from, what the group is using, or a different posting period variant, which is different from what the group is using. And, it needs, and for it to report effectively also, you need to set up ledgers. You need to set up um, um, document types and number ranges, because it's like the leading ledger. It's just that it's used for specific local requirements. And, you have to make sure, the database is large enough because it also consumes more database space because it stores full set of journals for its own use. So that's just giving you some idea between these ledgers. The third set of ledgers we have in SAP is what we call the extension ledgers. Just take note of the key points. So extension ledgers are also very important. I would say that extension ledgers, they are neither, I would say they sit on an underlying standard ledger. They sit somewhere around the leading ledger, in between the leading ledger and non-leading ledger. They are not leading ledgers, they are not non-leading ledgers. But the importance of this ledger is it is used for adjustments, or what we call management reporting or audit adjustments, or simulations duplicating data without going into the journals to duplicate data. So let's say, for example, we have said that the extension ledgers, so non-leading ledgers are used for local reporting requirements. Extension ledgers are used for adjustments, management reporting, and you can say audit audit adjustments and reconciliations. So when you use extensions ledger, the most important thing here is when you're using an extension ledger, instead of going directly to the GLs to make this adjustment and mess up, sometimes it messes up the records that we already have in the system. We use the extension ledger as an external source to make those adjustments so that it doesn't have it does what we want, but the beauty of the extension ledger is that it doesn't duplicate the database. Instead of going there and making adjustments that would create more duplications, the extension ledgers hit the GLs directly and avoid duplications. So for those who do post audit work, who need to make some adjustments in the system during the we need to make some adjustments in the system, you need the extension ledgers to be able to do that. So the essence of taking my time to explain this is one of the challenge we have consultants have is understanding what these objects are used for. And you need to understand them so that when you're gathering requirements, you know whether you need to set up, you know how to set up this, you know why you're setting up these ledgers and what they are going to be used for. That is why we are taking our time to explain this. One thing you must note is that the leading ledger is mandatory and is used for group reporting. Don't forget, leading ledger is mandatory and is used for group reporting. Non-leading ledger is not mandatory. It's only mandatory when you have um, local requirements that you need the ledgers to help you local requirements that you need to report on, then you need to set up these non-leading ledgers. However, it is important that you create a non-leading ledger in the system, but it's not mandatory that you report using non-leading ledgers. So they are not mandatory like the leading ledgers, but it's important to have them in case you have those local reporting requirements, which in most cases there are. Once you run an international business, every country has some local requirements you need to comply with, but it's not mandatory. Extension ledgers are also not mandatory. It's only important if you need to use it to make adjustments, or management reporting. So it's like I said, used for adjustments and for simulations. So it's important that as when you design, as as functional consultants, when you get into this detail, you're able to understand when to use these ledgers, how to set them up, and why you are creating them. That's why I'm really taking my time to explain the concept of ledgers. They are very, very important. Now, if we go to our settings, please let me know if you have any questions. I'll just go back.
I
So
have
to
a
set up
question.
your, okay, go ahead.
When we are discussing the non-leading ledgers, you mentioned that the variance principles for the non-leading ledger could be different from the one of the leading ledger. I don't know. I thought since we were doing a global setting for the
Mm,
configuration under variance principles,
mm.
why would they have different reporting dates, like posting
Yeah,
period
so
and
that's
reporting date?
that's important. So why would they have that? It's because most local requirements, remember, the essence of the non-leading ledger is to meet up with local requirements. And
Mm,
if the non-leading ledger is not flexible to have its own fiscal year variant and its own posting period variant, then it's no different from the leading ledger because those local requirements to make certain might require you to comply to certain requirements in a different period that is different from your non-leading ledger or using a different posting periods. And that's why it has that flexibility to be able to adjust itself to having a different fiscal year and a different posting period. It's just to comply with whatever those local requirements wants. So for example, a local requirement that can differ from the group might require you to report certain things in a different financial year, different from what the group is reporting. Do you understand what I'm saying? So a
yes.
local requirement can say that, for example, if you want to do your tax reporting should come 8 months. Meanwhile, we should be within the first 8 months of the fiscal year. Meanwhile,
Mm.
your group reporting is 12 months. And, it might say that you have to report every 6 months. So it depends on what that requirement is. So for you to be able to meet up with those varying local requirements, you need to also have a flexible non-leading ledger to manage those reporting requirements. And for you to do reporting, you need to have a flexible fiscal year and posting period. That is what triggers reporting.
Okay. Another point was we were talking of gap for the leading ledger, because I know at consolidation points you need the non-leading ledger for consolidation. But this issue of I was thinking at the group level, what currency, I mean, what accounting principle do we use at the group level? Must it be GAAP or IFRS? I thought it was IFRS we use at the group level
Is it in
for
this
consolidation.
configuration?
For consolidation. Eh?
It depends on where the group company is sitting now. When you say consolidation, or what is group to you?
Group is
Currency is where the company is the location where the company is called the headquarters of the company. If the
yes.
headquarters is in the US, why would you use IFRS? Will the US authority accept financial statements in IFRS?
Okay, the point is clear. Okay, it depends on the location of the accounting principle prevailing in the location of the headquarters of that
Group.
company or the group.
Exactly. Exactly. Because they need to report in their own local currency, but at group level. So if the group is sitting in the US, or if whether you're using Naira or you're using GBP or you're using Euro,
Mm,
at the point of consolidation, you need to translate all those currencies to USD, which
yes.
is the group currency, so that they can report to US tax authority using USD.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the essence of the parallel accounting. SAP does that automatically as long as the the currencies and their exchange rates are defined in the system. And of course, SAP already has embedded these principles from different countries into their system. So it's able to do that translation. You don't have to manually now pull out everything and start. You know what it would take to translate IFRS financial statement to GAAP? Have you had that experience before?
No.
Yeah, it means you have to pull out your trial balance and make sure it complies. So let's say, for example, IFRS has different those areas where they differ. You have to identify those areas where they differ, whether it's in depreciation or in revenue recognition or in whatever principles. When you identify those areas where they differ, you have to work on the trial balance to translate those currencies or translate those transactions to GAAP. It's crazy without a system, and that's the essence of the parallel accounting. It just helps you does that translation automatically and gives you your group reporting in one single currency.
Thank you.
Awesome. No problem. So I've taken my time to explain. Let's now go into the system and do some setup. So if you log in, go to define settings for ledgers and currencies. Do that. Now it's going to take you to this ledger page, but go up to currencies. Then you're going to see the currencies in the system. And somebody will say, wow. Yeah, in SAP, we have different kinds of currencies. By currency, we don't just mean USD, GBP. That's not the concept of currency in SAP. Those are transaction currencies. In the currency types in SAP in terms of configuration is what you're seeing. It depends on is defined by the structure of the document. Or by the structure of the setup. Now, in SAP, we have different types of currencies. You can see here that we have, and you can see their codes. We have document currency. I think we have over maybe 12. I've forgotten the number now, but there are lots of currencies in SAP S/4HANA. I think I will check that much later for you. But from this setting you see here, all these ones that are, we have one document currency, we have company code currency, controlling area currency, group currency, hard currency group valuation. All these are different kinds of currency settings in SAP. Now let's say, you know, the first one, document currency. Of course, by the word document currency, it's a currency that we use to document transactions, which might be your local currency. So if you set up USD as your company and USD as your currency when you were creating your company code, when you create an invoice, the currency that the system picks will be the currency of the company code, which is the home currency, and that's what we call the document currency. So document currency can be GBP. Company code currency is the home currency. Document currency can be a currency when we're entering transaction. It's at transaction level. Sorry about that. Company code currency is the home currency, which is when you're creating your company code, you assign the currency to that company code, which is your local currency. Document currency is this currency you select at the point of creating a document, which can be different from your home currency. So at the point of invoicing, you can change the currency from USD to GBP and process your transaction. That's what we call document currency. We also have the controlling area currency that is used to, for management reporting purposes. So that's one currency. Group currency is, you define group currency at company level. That's, for example, we have explained that if the headquarters is in the US, that means the group currency is USD. So it's a currency that aligns with the client and aligns with the company structure. Hard currency, you define hard currency when you define, the country assigned to your company code. So the idea of hard currency is basically just used to support your company code currency. So once you create a company code currency, a hard currency is also created in line with your company code currency. We have like index-based currency. You define this currency when you define, you know, I will check this. I will look at this, but it's also linked, just like your global currency. It's also linked to your company code currency. But the idea is that, why do we need all these currencies? That's a very big. Why do we need all these currencies in SAP? At the end of the day, it depends on what the business requirement is. So you might have some, and this is very important for global companies that have global reach across different countries in the world. And sometimes for reporting currencies and for different requirements in different countries, you can have, for example, take the US. If you're doing a lot of transactions that has to do with stock exchange, that has to do with a lot of other kind of transactions, there might be a requirement for you to show those reports in a different currency other than your home currency. So the idea is that, and there are some currencies, for example, that helps you check hyperinflation, that helps you make sure that, for example, if you look at the index-based currency, it's used primarily for tax reporting and for financial evaluation in countries that have hyperinflation. It's an example of what you can use the index currency for. So if you are setting up a company code and you're implementing for a country that has hyperinflation, like Venezuela now, and other countries that are struggling with inflation and their inflations are over the roof, you might want to use the index-based currency. So these currencies are used for different purposes, but at the end of the day, it depends on what the requirement is and you understanding what these currencies are. So when you see those requirements, you're able to relate with those, you might be able to set up the right currency that you need to do your work. So again, hard currency, index-based currency, they are all used for different purposes. I've said you that the index-based currency is used for economies that have hyperinflation. Hard currencies are used for reporting in countries experiencing economic instability, also also related to inflation also. So you see that before you choose the currency to use, you need to understand the economics of that country. Is very, you see how being a functional consultant gives you that global view about countries and about currencies. So it depends, but you get advice also from the finance team of that organization. So these are all the currencies we have. We have controlling area currency, and these currencies have been, all these ones you see that are graded out are defined by SAP. You can't change them. And once you have seen the different currency types, the next thing is to go to global currency conversion. Here you can just see how different currencies are mapped, with, different, valuation types. So we're not going to be staying much here, except we created our own global currency, then we can map it. If we go to currency conversion settings, here we'll need to now assign our own company code to one. We're going to assign it to, a group currency. We're also going to assign it to a company code currency. It's very, very important. If I check, let me see. So there are different other settings here. For example, this is one I copied from. You see, it's assigned to document currency and company code currency. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, this, or you can click on new, but I like selecting. So select a combination of group currency and document currency. So we're able to select the exchange rate type that we'll need to work on. So select a combination of something that has um, group currency, document currency, and is able to give us. So the combination is between group currency and document currency. You can also select between company code and group, which I also think is the same thing. Document currency is almost the same thing as your group currency. So it doesn't matter which one you, the combination for me should be okay. So whether you're selecting 00 or you're selecting 10, it just depends on what the requirement is. So let's see, which is important. And let's see, by standard, please select any of them as much as possible. So, but for the sake of this class, let's select a combination of, since we are not going to be doing a lot around the group side, let's select a combination that has group currency and company code currency. So select this, click on copy. Now my company code is ABC, ABCU. So I've entered my company code here. I've selected group currency because by structure, by standard, your company code must be assigned to a group currency and a company code currency. That's the best practice and standard in SAP S/4HANA. And I've also indicated that, my exchange rate type should be standard exchange rate. We'll explain this much later, but we use M, which is the standard exchange rate translation at average rate. Then we use translation date as our translation type. This should be real-time conversion. Click on enter. So it's telling me something already exists with this key. Wow. ABCU. Wow. Let me see. Is that my company code? Sorry. ABCU. Yes. Let me check. Let me check if at the point of creating it, assigned it automatically. So let me check ABCU. Oh, okay. It's been assigned automatically. So you guys can check once we copied the settings, so the system assigned that automatically and it's fine. So we have a group currency, we have a currency valuation for group and for company code. That's good. Then once I've dealt with the concept of currency, we can now see the next thing is the concept of ledgers. So select the ledger, double click here. You're going to see the list of ledgers we have in the system already. Double click on ledger to open the folder. You're going to see the list of all the ledgers. We have leading ledger, which is OL, like I said, which needs to be assigned to your company code because every company code must have a leading ledger. So select the leading ledger first and double click on company code settings for ledger. Just say okay when it brings out this page. You don't need to do anything. Now, it has taken me to all the company codes we have in the system. Go to position, find your company code. ABCU is my own. Now, what we can see here, then when you see my company, you double click on it. So automatically it's been assigned to a leading ledger and it's been assigned to company code. Because I copied, everything has been created, but what the principle that it came with is IFRS. And let me see if I can edit that. If I click on edit, because I didn't want that to happen. Because I already created gap for my principles for this company code. But because it copied IFRS as a principle. And I am unable to change this at this point. Let me see what I can do. I think this is fine. Cannot make the changes. I can only change the fiscal year, and this has happened. So please check. The only thing that has not happened here is the global currency type, which will have to happen when we define our controlling area. So because we copied, the system already copied the currency conversion for company code, copied the leading ledger, and selected IFRS as my accounting principal ledger. Well, I would have loved to use gap, but unfortunately, because we copied from an existing company, IFRS has been adopted, which is not bad anyway. So I might just change my principle. I would just say that, let me go back and change this principle to say company code will use IFRS for my leading ledger. Then we'll use company code, we'll use gap for non-leading ledger. That's for local reporting. So since it has copied and it has given me IFRS, assigned IFRS to my company code, it's fine. Let's go and see what it assigned, whether I assigned a non-leading ledger for me. So I go back, close this. Normally I would have just assigned it myself. So go back again. Now we need to create we'll check if our non-leading ledger is here. We created a asterisk. I created as my non-leading ledger. It's not here. So I'm going to copy the one I see here, and I'll click on copy, and I'll say a asterisk. Again, I'll create it here as non-leading ledger for my company code ABCU. I'm going to say it's a standard ledger, not an extension ledger. It's a standard, but not a leading ledger, but a standard ledger. It will use for legal valuation, which is okay for me. And this is now where I put an accounting principle for my non-leading ledger. So I'm going to select that gap I created, GA asterisk. So yes, I'm going to use this G asterisk P as my principle for this non-leading ledger. I'm going to click on enter. I'll copy all. Okay. So I have an accounting principle for my non-leading ledger. I'll go to company code settings. So select the ledger, double click on company code settings. Say okay. Then this is the accounting print. This is my accounting principle ledger. This is my accounting principle. Now I can change. Okay, this was assigned for AAA1. No. Let me go back from here. I think I copied. Okay, so asterisk was because I copied it, it assigned this to this, but we need to assign our own company code here. So let me just go, if I say new entries, select my company code, ABCU, enter. It's going to pick my fiscal year and my variance. And you see here, for non-leading ledger A asterisk, I have put in my company code here. I've assigned my company code to my non-leading ledger. It has picked the principal, the company code currency, but it has left my group currency, which would be my controlling area currency. So you can tell the system it's good for parallel accounting see now we can't use ledgers for this because we can't use GL accounts, we're using ledgers. So save and say okay. Say okay. Yes. So this has been created for a non-leading ledger. So let me explain again. So we have two ledgers here now. We have the non-leading ledger and 0L, which is the leading ledger. Leading ledger has IFRS as the accounting principle. Non-leading ledger has GAAP as the principle. So what it means is that if I want to do reporting at group level, I'll use IFRS. If I want to do reporting at you know, local requirements, I use GAAP. So it's just a reverse. Unfortunately, that reverse happens. That reverse happened. But if I want my leading ledger to go back to GAAP, all I need to do is to change it here to GAAP and save it again. But it will affect every other person. And I don't want that to happen because this is a group server. All I need to do is to come here in my leading ledger and change the principle here to GAAP, and the system will reverse, but it will affect every other person that has created their work here, which is not fair. So no changes. So IFRS is fine, and GAAP. So I've just done the reverse. So which is okay because we're using a demo system. If it were a live system, my leading ledger would be GAAP and my non-leading ledger would be IFRS. Just take note of that as you do your own design. Okay, I think these are accounting principles for ledger and company codes. I think this is also we don't need to do any setting here. So these are the two important things we need to set up. Luckily, when we copied, the system did most of the copying for us. Copied our currency conversion settings, copied our ledgers. So, for example, again, let me save this. Yes, and let me refresh this again, show you what we did here. So if I go back, now we started by defining settings for ledgers. Then we went to currency. We looked at the different currency types. Show that we have different currency types. We looked at the global currency conversion settings. We didn't create a global currency, so we're just using the existing currencies we have. We did currency conversion settings for company code. Search for your company code. For example, let me see whose company code is here. Let me see if CXUS is here. So you see yours is here already. So yours is here already because you copied. So same way, You don't need to do anything. Just confirm that your company code is there and you are good to go. So mine is here also. Now, since you have confirmed this, the next thing you do is to select the company and double click on ledgers. So we can assign. The first thing we did was currency. The next step is to assign ledger. So when you select the ledger, you go to company code settings for ledger. It will bring out all the company code settings that non-leading ledger has been assigned to. Search for your company. So you see my company is here. And we have other types of currencies that you can assign. And you can see that for my company, the fiscal year is K4, the posting period variance is ABCU, the accounting principle is IFRS. We have said that parallel accounting using GL. I don't want parallel accounting using GL. I'm already using parallel accounting using ledgers. My functional currency is 10, which is document currency. You can have more currencies for reporting. Some people have put 30 here, which will be their group currency, which would probably be their second FI currency. So it depends on what you want to put here. But if once we do our CEO configuration, group currency should be able to apply. So you can use your second FI currency as if we do 30, for example, and click on enter. Yeah, it will tell us that there's a value map somewhere, so it won't work. So we will need FI. When we do CEO is going to pick this as our group currency because in our currency conversion, we have already told the system that 30 should be used for group currency. This is 30. But controlling area will need this group currency when it's doing its management reporting. So system will automatically assign that much later. So this is the work that needs to happen for currencies and parallel accounting. And you might need to go through this video again to make sure you pick up the right thing. So we're going to go for a brief break. When we come back, we're going to, let me see if there's anything. I think we have a group ledger already, which we have defined. So the system didn't create it again. So we have this group ledger is already defined. When we come back, we're going to, I think we'll be done with most of what we have here. Parallel evaluation approach will pick up when we look at CO. And integration with CEO, we will pick up when we look at CEO, not now. Now, when we come back, we have looked at ledgers and we have spent most of our time in ledgers. When we return, we're going to pick, somebody asked me a question when we started, we're going to look at, our global settings, global parameters. We'll look at functional areas, which we will not, but just explain. Look at documents, and we will look at some other things as we move on. So thank you very much, guys. I've taken my time to explain this concept because it's always very confusing, but you need to go back, play this video again, just do some research, just to understand the concept, and that will really help. So thank you very much, guys. Let's go for a 5 minutes break so that your brain can just relax. But you need to do some research. Some of you might understand it quickly. Some of you will need some time to just play back again and again to really understand what the concept is, because we need to put in all these structures before we're able to configure the system. And understanding it is also very important. So see you all, guys, at about 5 minutes from now. Take a walk, take a stretch, and we'll be back. Thank you very much.